reminding me. There we go.
Thank you. So I'd like to start, the first item that we have on the agenda is on the issue of the PFAS update. And I just wanted, for those of you who were with us on the call the last time we met, I know there was some question about what the status of the PFAS analysis was for the town, which the samples were done in October. And Jonathan Preisler did get back to us and say that they had misread the results in assuming that there was that they had found some PFAS in the town's water sample. But in fact, what it was is that the way the readings are done, they only can go down to a certain limit for parts per trillion. And below that, they can't, it does not register for them. So in the analysis that they did, the town's water basically showed nothing above those minimum limits that they could test to. And so that's what the result showed, was those minimal limits. They assumed that they can't take it any lower than that. So that what they found, or what they didn't find, they just listed it as that low level of what the tests are able to determine. And so therefore there was really no PFAS found in the town's water from the Boy Scout Camp well site. So the next thing is that we have to test again in January. And assuming that that comes back negative as well, then we can request a deferral on further testing for the next 12 months. So, but so that's where the town's water stands at this point, the municipal water. But in reviewing that, we did, talk about the issue of the potential for PFAS samples to show up in private wells. And that's why I know that that's the reason that Dan, excuse me, that Dan is on the line with this afternoon. And we've done a little bit of review of that issue as well. And there are services available, but I'd like to hear from Dan what your concerns are on it, Dan.
Thank you, Jim, and hello to everybody. Let me introduce Louise Johnson as well. She's my next door neighbor. I know you, I think I know everybody on the committee, and I think you all know me, but I'm not sure Louise, and if that's reciprocal with Louise. But Louise and her partner Jill are our next door neighbor, our immediate next door neighbors on Sandpiper Hill Road. The reason I asked to address the committee, I talked to Jim earlier in the week, is the town offered through its website a connection to the UMass and the DEP, which is doing a pilot test program in towns across the state, testing private wells. I think this is to help the DEP determine the extent of PFAS pollution or contamination in private wells. Janice and I decided to jump on that. Janice Gray, my wife, and I decided to jump on that and have our wells tested. And the results came back rather disconcerting. The first test came back, the level was more than 3 times the state limit of 20 ppt. Our well tested, I think the test came in at 65 ppt. The state, the researchers asked us to do a retest, confirmatory retest. I made the mistake of taking it from a different tap, and even though it wasn't treated, my scientific technique was not good. I should have known better, but the first test was taken from the upstairs bathroom. Second was taken from the kitchen. Neither of those are treated. None of our water is treated. The second one came back below the 20 ppt level, but still, I think it was somewhere in the neighborhood of 13. But researchers who we talked to extensively on the phone said, given that the average is still above that, she was recommending that we go to a whole house system. When I talked to Louise about this, our wells are right next to one another, although ours is a shallow well and Louise's is a deeper well submersible. Louise, I'm not sure if Louise knows exactly how deep her well is. She can weigh in, but our well is quite shallow. It's only about 15 feet from ground, which, given where we are on the lens, we haven't had too much of a problem of salt, but of course it is potentially subject to more surface contamination. So the short answer is we're probably going to, and I shouldn't say probably, we're going to go ahead and investigate treating our water with the recommended treatments. But what brought this to mind, and the reason I wanted to talk to the water commissioners is I would really like to have town water available. From a private perspective, obviously I would like to be able to drink the good, clean water that's coming out of the Boy Scout camp. But I'd also like to speak to the board about the more public concern is this many years into a water system, I really would like to see the town move forward with providing the water, public water to the town as a whole. I think, in the 21st century here, it's really kind of, I think the town is behind the times. And I know the issues with the funding model. I know how flawed it is. I know that water commissioners have been wrestling with trying to address what was, I think, a fatally flawed funding model from the get-go. But the reality is taxpayers as a whole are paying for this system, and only a very tiny percentage of property owners are benefiting from it. So part of what I'd like to ask the water commissioners is to seriously consider going to the town and looking to expand the water system town-wide. And I recognize we're probably not going to be able to take it all the way out to the backside of Gull Pond and those areas in the seashore, but for the rest of the town, when the system was first designed, there were phases that were designed into the system that would expand it pretty much town-wide. And the town was able to take advantage of ARA money to build out a good percentage of what we've done already. And with the infrastructure money now getting ready to flow, I think it would be great if the town tried to jump on that and get some of this funded. Whether it does or not, though, I think it's long past time that the town look at going to a town-wide water system. Everybody should pay for it, whether they make the choice to be on it or not. And I think, I think it's debatable whether or not to mandate hookups. I can see an argument for not mandating, but I think whether you choose to hook up or not, I think we all need to pay for the system. So that's, in a nutshell, what I'm coming to the water commissioners, both a private concern for our own water and the more public concern of basically providing potable water town-wide. And obviously, my other sort of residual concern would be providing fire protection to the town as a whole as well. So that's really all I have to say. I'd be happy to answer any questions about the testing procedure, what we went through to try to do more testing. I mean, we have no idea where the contamination is coming from. And that's the bottom line. There's not any industrial facility anywhere near us. I don't know, what went on over at the Dunkin' Donuts or in the IGA years ago, or, the various uses that have gone on there, but nothing that I can think of would put PFAS in the water other than all the other multiple sources that it provides. So I'll stop there and see if Louise wants to add anything.
Kateri, you are muted.
Hi, yes, thank you. I'm happy to be able to join the meeting. Danny really summed it up. He said very eloquently, and I really agree with him. I think the only thing I'd add is that we happen to get tested, but there's, I assume, thousands of other wells in the town, and nobody has any idea what people are drinking and if it's safe or not. I think it is, when it's treated town-wide, when it's a town system, then it can be monitored and everybody can feel safe. You know, that the town has it under control, it comes out of the tax base, and I really support what he said, and I think that's the way to go. I think, you know, obviously it's something that wouldn't happen overnight, but I think there needs to be a plan and, you know, an aggressive plan to really make people feel safe about the water in the town. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Louise. Kateri, did you want to say something? You're muted.
Mute and it doesn't.
You are.
Oh,
Okay,
I'm okay now?
yes.
Okay, great. Yeah, probably 5 or 6 years ago, we started seriously looking into what it would cost to continue into Indian Neck. And of course, I live in Indian Neck too, and I'd love to have town water here. The bottom line was it was going to cost approximately $130 million. And that was the reason why nothing went forward from there, because that's not the kind of money we have. Now, this money that is, this money that's being proposed from coming from the federal government, if it provides the kind of money needed, I mean, this is an extremely expensive thing to do. Now, in terms of everybody, you brought up the issue of everybody should pay. Well, one of the other things that has come up as well is the idea that what betterments, which means if it goes by your door, you pay. That's the standard way that everybody is using anymore. And therefore we don't have to, I think, apologize or justify, because that's just really the way you need to do it. So if we can get some federal money and we can move to betterments, we may be able to proceed, but it's a big expense.
So when did Dan or Louise, when did that testing happen for your properties?
For us, it was just before and just after Thanksgiving.
For
Louise,
me,
yeah.
Same,
Of this-
yeah, December.
Of this year?
Oh,
Yes.
yeah. Yep.
Okay.
Just
Because-
happened.
Okay, I was, by the way, I have signed up to be tested now. After talking with Dan, I would love to get our water tested. And they're still advertising that on the Mass DEP website, that you can apply to have your water tested for PFAS. And what I would like to find out is, I know that there were, in that sampling that was done, there were 33 properties that were sampled when yours were sampled. And of the 33, 4 of them had elevated levels, but we don't know where those are. It just says Wellfleet.
Right.
And I'm not sure
Well,
whether
2 of them are.
you know some of, but what I think we should find out through through Hillary at the Department of Health is if she knows the location of any of the positive hits here. And I think it would, we should be looking more closely at those areas to begin with. Not to say that it isn't, that we don't agree with your idea, Dan, that it should be town-wide. But if we're limited in what we can do in the near term, due to what the funding levels might be, then I think we should try to zero in on the most problematic areas that we have. I would like to see more people sign up for testing. I'd like to get more people interested in this and get them, in the point where they want to see something happen as well. And that, I think, is part of what we want to do. This is an idea that came up recently as well, that with the expansion of the water system from the Coles Neck well field down into town along Briar Lane, we want to have a community forum just to let people know what's happening and when this is going to happen. And at that time, I think we want to raise this issue as what the impact of what PFAS could have on your well, if you're on a well right now and you have the option to hook up to town water, that we encourage more people to get tested to find out what the status of their wells are. And I think that's one way that we will hopefully get more enthusiasm for an expansion of the water system here in town.
Yeah. Well, I think the other thing is that we need to have some sort of systematic sampling of the town. I mean, it should be, somebody knows where these samples came from. Looking at the town map, it should be very obvious what parts were sampled well and what parts were. Now, the two of you happened to be next to one another and you were both high, right?
No.
Yes.
So
Yes.
I would think that you'd want to look a little broader in your same neighborhood and have another people around you to see, is this a bigger problem than just the two of these, or is it something very local? Some business was there and did some dumping at one point or another, or whatever was responsible for the PFAS.
Yeah, well, the problem is if you're not getting it done through the state, my understanding from talking to the researcher was that it's upwards of $300, $400, $500 to get it tested. It's not every lab can do this. The county lab is not qualified to do this.
Yeah, there's somebody in town that you can get. I just heard, we just had the plumber here, and the Ace Hardware in Eastham apparently has a connection with a firm that does testing, and it costs about $85.
Yeah, but
that may not.
That's still a lot of money, but it's not 300 or 400.
Yeah, my understanding is that the state has only certified, I want to say maybe a half a dozen labs to be able to
do that. Yeah.
I mean, I think there may be a lot of, for want of a better term, snake oil salesmen who are promising to treat water and promising to do tests, but whether or not they actually have the expertise and actually have what's
So
necessary.
we really need to look into this issue, I think.
I think one of
people from Tufts can help us with this.
one of the things, this is measured in parts per trillion. So that sort of tells you need some pretty serious equipment to do this.
I was reading the sampling instructions, and it's like you need essentially a sterile environment to take tests. It's crazy.
I think that would be a good place to start, as you were referring to earlier, on Briar Lane, is to make them cognizant that these tests are available and at a reduced rate. I hadn't known that the state was sponsoring those free or low budget samples, so I'm fairly well cognizant of what's going on.
Yeah. Well, Tom, I think that's what the goal of having like a community forum regarding this next expansion was, maybe will generate some interest from other folks as well. I'd love to see more people get on board about this and to have their water tested. That's the way Eastham was able, I think, to really sell the expansion of their water system, was by making more people aware of the fact that they had a problem with the water there. So we are starting the expansion of along from Colesnick Wellfield down on Briar Lane within the next couple of weeks. It's the second week of January. They're supposed to start staging for that project. So we wanted to get a meeting set up, a Zoom meeting for people who are interested in hearing about the schedule for that, particularly those people on Briar Lane, and encourage them to consider this issue of the PFAS analysis now, and to reach out to Mass DEP for assistance.
Jim, could I say just one or two other things? In terms of figuring out where those other two wells are, I don't know whether that's privileged information, HIPAA type thing or not, but Hillary, if the level is above the state standard of 20. I believe the DEP is required to report it
Yes.
to Hillary.
But
So
I read too. I read that
yeah,
too.
she may know. Now, whether or not that it becomes public record or not, I don't know. On a private well, I mean, what the DEP says is that a public water supply, you know, any kind of a public water supply, the water supplier, if you will, the water system is responsible. But as a private individual, you're responsible for protecting your own drinking water. You're nobody else is responsible other than you, unless they can find that someone has polluted your well. And you know, how do you find that out? The other comment I wanted to make to Catherine is, yes, I recognize that it's expensive to do this system, but you know, this kind of a thing is bonded over many years. The other thing is, if the word gets out that Wellfleet's water is polluted, you know, that's going to be a pretty expensive proposition too, in terms of the property values in town and things like that. Just take a look at Flint, Michigan. Take a look at these other places that have polluted water. You know, that's not something that you know, people associate with Wellfleet. And you know, I don't think it's a good image for the town to you know, have it known that, you know, that there's a potential problem and that the town doesn't want to do anything about it. I mean, I understand that it's expensive, but I think you might underestimate the willingness of people to address this, and just to want town water. I mean, you know, our power was out for three or 4 days, you know, a couple of months ago, and you know, people who didn't spend the money for generators don't have drinking water. That's a public health issue. I mean, I understand that it's an expensive process. It's partly expensive because Wellfleet's put its head in the sand for decades in terms of trying
Yeah,
to.
well, that's really what happened. There was money available at one point and we didn't take advantage of it. Now,
Yeah,
if there's money available again, that's another thing. Now, one of the things about you, because you're very close to Route 6,
what
know-
I asked the researcher, I'm close to Route 6, I'm close to Cove Road. I'm very close to Cove Road. I asked her, I said, is this likely to have come from road runoff? And she said, probably not. She said, road chemicals, salt, things like that, the kinds of things that, you know, motor oils and so forth that come off the road, that's not where PFAS is coming from. PFAS
Yeah.
they're waterproofing compounds, firefighting foams, which given my history is somewhat ironic, but and you know, Teflon, Gore-Tex,
Yeah,
things
yeah,
like
yeah.
that, you know.
but this, I mean, Indian Neck was not that well developed.
No,
I mean, really.
no.
So it's curious. I mean, you know, coming from a scientific point of view, you really want to establish where the problems are. And if you've got two houses adjacent to one another, the obvious thing is you need to search the neighborhood and see how far this extends.
Yeah,
You know,
I agree. I agree.
But
But
you don't know.
You got to
you
get a
don't-
picture of
those-
what's going on.
You don't know if any of those folks in your neighborhood, anybody else, had their water tested, right?
no,
Because this was voluntary.
Right. Right. You know, I could go and knock on doors and say, hey, we found this on our well. How would you like to spend $400 to test yours? You know,
It's
that might be a
400.
tough sell.
Yeah,
Huh?
I mean,
Well,
see,
no,
I
no,
think there's something the health department should be involved with.
Well, perhaps, but I
Yeah.
don't think the town has a budget to do it right now. And I don't
No.
think the water department does.
But I mean, I think what, you know, you were suggesting, or Tom was suggesting about, you know, there being or Catherine, I'm sorry, you were suggesting about a plumber in town who may not be certified, but may be able or has an access to a testing at a much lower rate. That's one of the things that came up on the Mass DEP website, was that there are companies out there that do this. And if you come back, you know, if you pay $75 or $80 to have the test done and it comes back positive, then it's probably worthwhile to spend the $300 to $400 to determine if indeed, you know, what the level of PFAS is in your well. But I'm waiting to hear back from DEP now about whether or not they will include me in their sampling here at no cost. If so, if they're still allowing private residences to join on this in Wellfleet, I think we should encourage more people to reach out to them. Even if they say, no, we can't do it now. I mean, I think it helps to show that there's interest in this and concern on the part of the residents of the town.
Yeah, I believe that the health department should be the contact person. And I think your comment earlier, Dan, was correct, that if it's their jurisdiction, they can contact the people and then we would respond to what the results would be.
Yeah, this is a health department issue. It really is.
Yeah, right.
Well, yeah, I mean, I agree that, trying to figure out what's going on is a health department issue, but my reason for wanting to come to the water department was you're the folks that are, going to bring forward, some sort of a plan to expand the water system, whether you do or not.
And,
Yeah,
and Dave, we agree with
yeah.
you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I'm pleased that, at least we have two additional supporters here now, because we've been saying this for a long time about the need for expansion of the system.
Yeah.
And I think we just need to find more people who are willing to say that. And if we can generate enough interest, I think we can then hopefully come up with a plan. Whether it's, the town pays for it all, or whether it's with the assistance from the state or federal government, however we're able to do it, but to really get more properties on the municipal water system.
Is the board in a position to talk to our legislators and,
That's the other point would be, I think if we have,
who finds out how we get in line for infrastructure money?
yes, absolutely, absolutely.
I'm not sure I want to leave that to the select board. I think they've got enough on their plate.
Yeah.
I think the other thing is this is sort of a moving target. Your well may test fine this year, but what's to say that you don't have a problem that's percolating down next year, the year after? So this is sort of, and as we continue to use the chemicals that cause this problem, which we are, it's only a matter of time before more and more people get caught up in this.
Yeah. I mean, and people that have wells have septic systems, okay? So
Right.
they could be contaminating their own wells,
Right.
Quite possible.
quite possible,
Yeah.
So the point of it is really you need a water supply for the whole town coming from a pure and deep source. But it costs more money than it seems possible to do without a lot of federal aid.
But now is the best time to approach that with the potential to be coming down the pipe.
Okay, so write Manchin and have him vote so that we can get
Yeah.
federal money.
What was the first part of that, Catherine?
Get in touch with Manchin, convince him that he would be helping us. If he would.
Well, the infrastructure bill passed. That money is already,
Yeah.
Is that money already available?
Yes.
Oh, I
don't know if the money's available.
Okay.
but
I
the
didn't know what
infrastructure
was
bill-
exactly which box the various things were
No,
in.
I think the infrastructure bill did pass. and
Oh,
we're-
okay.
Talk
So
about
what is Massachusetts going to get? And how much can we expect?
That isn't known yet. But I think Dan's suggestion about contacting our legislators, that's important. That we, will be needing to do that in the not too distant future. So,
And I also think we need to meet with Hillary.
yeah.
Well, I'll be happy to talk to Hillary, from a personal perspective, but
Mhm.
And when this happened, Dan, you didn't, for you anyways, you weren't in touch with her office then?
No.
Because I read those guidelines that I think that you are the same ones that they require now. And it does say that the information is shared with the local DEP.
Right.
With the local health department.
Right. Well, I'm kind of waiting for Hillary to call me, I guess.
Yeah, right. No, it's
She's got a lot on her plate right now, out too, so
Yeah, but this is a really important issue.
I think so.
I mean, everybody's getting upset about PFAS all of a sudden, like this is a really hot topic, okay? People have known about them for a long period of time, but it wasn't it is now. And the other thing is then they're talking about, sewage, putting in sewage, like, my God, sewage costs like 3 times as much as water. So it's like,
Probably
forget
5 times.
that. But,
Probably 5 times
even,
as much.
yeah, exactly. I mean, yeah.
Well, for what it's worth, the year I was elected moderator for the first time, long before I ever did the first town meeting, I think it was 3 special town meetings, and the subjects were all water versus sewer. Do we do water?
Really?
Oh yeah, this was 1999. We
No
were
kidding.
debating whether or not we should do, it was referred to as the big pipe, small pipe. Should we do big pipe and not the small pipe? Should we do the small pipe and not the big pipe, meaning water but not sewer? Should we do sewer and not water? Should we do both?
Oh,
Should we do
no.
neither? And there are some people in town who just do not want to see town water. The town for decades has used resistance to providing potable water as a de facto zoning tool. And I think that's practically criminal at this point. But basically they said, well, if we put in town water, then there's no restrictions and we can have multifamily housing. Well, now suddenly we're looking at maybe we would like to have some
Multifamily housing.
You're not going to be able to do that without providing potable water. You're not going to be able to do that without addressing the wastewater issues. And, we've fiddled around for so long that the wastewater we're going to be mandating to do if we don't get it done soon.
And that's going to, and in terms of public health, that's the least of our problems compared to the purity of the water that people are drinking and using for cooking. I mean, you'd love to have both, but the reason I know about sewage, one of my sons is a civil engineer, and I was talking to him about it, and he said, "Oh, sewers? Are you kidding?" Because
As a civil engineer, and I know that they're really.
He said it's so much more complicated, the piping of it.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Look at what Orleans is doing right now. It's like a rat's maze to get through town.
Right.
They're digging up the streets. But water is relatively simple. It's not cheap, I know.
Yeah, no, but it's cheaper than sewage. The sewers, much, as I said, he said it would be 3 times as much. So maybe it's only double as much, but that's a lot of money.
I wouldn't be surprised if it was 4 or 5 times as much, to be honest with you.
Yeah, because water pipes, you can just take them anywhere, and something's being pumped through. With sewage, it's got to flow by gravity.
Keep the pump running, that's all you have to do.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for your, for doing it.
What I would like to do then with this is to reach out to Hillary to make her aware that we've had this discussion. There is concern that we want to take this to the next step here, and kind of piggyback on the issue of the expansion that's coming down Briar Lane, to make people aware of this as an issue and something that they should be looking to get their well water tested for, as soon as they can. And maybe we can get more people really on board to support this, and take advantage of any funding that comes down, but identify the areas in town that really need to be, where we really need to push for more expansion of the system. I think
the pretty obvious thing is bring water down Route 6 and then take it off going in, and the places that needed, were basically on the west side of Route 6.
Yeah, that's probably pretty accurate, right? The irony is if we were in a good, if the town really had its act together, the time to put the pipes down Route 6 is when the state's going to repave the road in a couple of years.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah. The cost of digging up the road and getting those permits is pretty expensive. The pipe itself is really cheap.
Am I correct that the plan is that's going to happen all from the Eastham line to the trail line?
Line to line. That's my understanding is that the state is going to be repaving that road, border to border, line to line. And that's probably.
You live in Massachusetts where they don't know what coordination is.
Yeah. Well,
We
setting a
just-
water line just down Route 6, I mean, just putting the pipes in, that would not be anything as expensive as, going out and trying to cover Indian there.
Well, just again, historical perspective, the last time that road was paved 20 years ago, Tom Ferreira, who, retired captain from our fire department, said, they got the road dug up, let's put the water pipe in, even though we don't have a water system. Someday we have a water system, the pipe will
Oh,
be
right.
there. And we can put hydrants all along Route 6 and provide fire protection.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
nobody paid any attention to him.
Well,
Did-
is he still alive?
Tom? Yeah, oh yeah, very much so. Yeah.
Okay, let's talk to that guy. He sounds like his head's on right.
Yeah, I mean, it was fairly obvious then that
Yeah,
putting the pipe
exactly.
in is a relatively
Yeah.
small cost
yeah.
compared to what it takes to dig up the road and all of that.
Oh, absolutely,
Yeah, so
absolutely.
that was probably.
Well, we've got a lot of things we can start working on, I think.
We do. Yeah.
Well, again, thank you for your attention. And, again, one more point is, for whatever it's worth, I think the folks who are interested in expanding housing opportunities are also natural allies of yours, because I think they understand that absent potable water, it's more of a challenge than to try to provide. That's what basically drove the Briar Lane expansion was the threat that 95 Lawrence couldn't go forward without that redundant water supply. So,
Oh, yeah.
I think sympathy for the 95 Lawrence project is a lot of what helped sell the town.
Right. You're right.
The Briar Lane. So, there is a constituency there, I think, that is
Mhm.
supportive of seeing the water system expanded, just to be able to maybe have a little more inclusive zoning.
Mhm.
These things all tie into one another. None of it exists in a vacuum. And, in fairness to you folks, I think the water system did exist in a vacuum. I think the water system was, treated as a stepchild of the town's infrastructure as a whole, and said, you've got to do it so it isn't going to cost anybody anything. You've got to do it so it's going to pay for itself. You've got to do it so the
Yeah,
taxpayers
yeah.
aren't going to be impacted. And the way the system was set up to be funded, that was what was attempted, but clearly that's not working. So
Mhm.
I don't think that's the way that it should be approached in the future.
Right.
That's
Well,
my editorial.
I thank both of you for joining us
Yeah,
this
thank you so
afternoon.
much.
you.
Well,
We'll keep you in the loop, and but I do expect that within the next month that we're going to ask for a community forum meeting to talk about Briar Lane and the schedule for that, and use that as kind of a jumping off point for discussion on the PFAS as well.
Be
Mhm.
happy to attend that, Jim.
Thank you.
I would too. Thank you very much.
Please.
Thank you
All
so
right.
much. And, happy
All right.
holidays to you all.
Thank
Yeah.
you. Too.
All right. Bye-bye.
Thank Thanks. So our next item on here, and this one is important because we need to share our recommendation with the Finance Committee. But first, I want to give credit to Karen for working really hard on this over the last couple of weeks to help put together, the draft budget for the coming year. And I know that it was a lot of work because it was really sifting through information that was coming from a number of sources, and she basically had to take a lot of it apart to demonstrate what the actual costs were in some of these areas. So Karen and I did, just so you know, Karen and I did meet for Charlie Sumner last Thursday. And what you're looking at here is a budget that is essentially Charlie was very supportive of, in agreement with our concerns about. So I just would like to go through this with you quickly, line by line, looking at the numbers for the year that's currently underway, 2022, as well as the proposed budget for 2023. I assume everybody has this budget?
Jim, I resent it out today, just so
Right,
that they had it.
Yep. So the first line that's in here is the salaries and wages. And that's essentially, there was an increase in that line reflecting that Karen's work with the Water Commission has expanded, and the recognition by Charlie, administration, that she's spending a lot more time on that than had originally been envisioned. So that's why there's an increase up to 27,086 there. The next big line here is the Whitewater contract services. And I'd like to kind of explain that, what happened last year and in prior years. Last year, I think it was, the budget was developed, included a lot of people that were involved in it. And it was very unclear as to what was included in it. And so we ended up with a budget that was submitted to town meeting and was approved, but it lacked a lot of detail, and it really changed, it reshaped the whole way that the Water Enterprise Fund budget had been developed prior to that. So the second line on here is the Whitewater contract services. And what that is that this past year, as you know, we had to renew the contract for this water system operator. Whitewater was essentially the only organization that applied to do that work. And, we approved their contract, their proposal. And essentially what the proposal was, the number that's on here, the 85,000 that's on this line, reflects the budget of 84,500 that was in their base contract fee. And that represented a 2.5% increase over the prior year. Because the prior year it had been 82,440. But as I said, that's just for their basic fee. Does not include contingency costs, additional overtime or anything like that. So that's how I think if you look at the prior year where it said 138,750, the accountant at the time had lumped everything in together. So it was hard to know what was the base fee as well as what was the overtime and any other contingency fees associated with, contract services that generally are provided by Whitewater. Let's say if there were an emergency, like for example, when we had the E. coli hit last year, that took a lot of additional time and testing on the part of Whitewater. And that was not reflected in the base service fee. So the next line on here is the Whitewater contingency, and that includes those additional costs, the overtime, the subcontractor fees that we end up having to pay for work, like if Robert V. Hour came in to repair a pipe, or if we have contracts with, say, like company that services our generator, or say like Cape Water Resources, Butch Nealon, who handles the SCADA system for us. That's all in the contingency line, the 35,000 that's there. So it was teased out of the 138,000 from last year so that we have it on a separate line, so we know exactly what we're paying on a month-to-month basis to Whitewater and what the additional costs are for overtime and subcontractors, things like that. Then the next line is small equipment supplies. It's really what we used to call repairs and maintenance. And mind you, this is not a replacement of equipment, but it is repairs or maintenance of equipment. So like when the generator failed this year, the repair cost there to fix that, that would come out of the repair maintenance line. And that's the 20,000 that's reflected in here. So if you add the three lines, the 85,000, the 35,000 and the 20,000, we get up to 140,000, which is very close to what was included in last year's budget
Yeah.
for the Whitewater contract services. But this way it teases it out so we have a better idea of what we're spending in what areas. Mind you, I want to point out that, and Karen and I talked about this, and I think she understands my concerns on this. Such things as a replacement of a hydrant or a new generator, anything like that, those are capital costs. And normally they would appear underneath the line, below the line of operating expenses. And that's standard for most budgets. Because you would depreciate those assets, a generator or a hydrant, something like that, over a much longer period of time. It wouldn't all be spent in 1 year. We need to talk about a capital budget later on. So the next line after the repairs and maintenance line is the telephone, and that is just for the line that is used for the SCADA system controls, $1,000 a year. Then electricity, 12,000. That's about what we spent in the past year on electricity. We did not increase it at all, this is something that we'd have to look at. If we have to pull more money from another line, we will. And then the next line is in water testing and chemicals. This, I need to do a bit more research on it. I don't think we ever had a separate line for chemicals or supplies like that. I thought it was paid for through the Whitewater contract, and I really want to negotiate that with them. I don't think we should be spending, money on that when that's something that's part of their day-to-day operations for maintaining the system. The next line on here is backflow testing, and you see that that's 0 at this point. And the reason that's 0 is that this is a pass-through. If there is a cost associated with this inspection or testing on backflow devices that's done by Whitewater, that's passed through to the customer. But normally this is on businesses that have backflow devices that need to be regularly inspected. This is a requirement by Mass DEP, and most towns do reflect the costs associated with that as a separate line that's passed through to the user. We added a little bit here for legal services because whenever we have a contract reviewed, it's through to AP Law does that for us. It's a small amount. We don't anticipate any significant expense in that area in the coming year. Similarly, the office expenses is a very small amount, and that is paid for primarily through administration. The next line is on postage, and this we have it in here now at 1,550, and that's what the cost that we estimate it would be if we were to take the billing back in house. It is under consideration. The decision hasn't been made yet, but we put it in here just to be safe. That if the decision is made to do billing once again in house, that's the cost that would be associated with sending out the bills or any notices to customers. Similarly, the advertising line of 200. That's if we have to post a public announcement about the water system, that's where the cost of that would be shown. So what you're looking at there is, those are all the operating expenses that we talked about up to this point. And so that comes out to be 186,086. Then, of course, we have debt service as well, but the debt service being the USDA loans that we have. There are two of those. The principal on those two loans amounts to 57,180 a year. And the interest debt on that debt is 51,146. So the total debt service is 108,000. So the next line, instead of saying total debt, it should say total operations and debt service is the 294,412. And in reality, you'll see that that's not that different from what we had spent in the past year when we were really on an austerity budget, in my opinion. So then moving along to the revenue side here, this was, we had the past year, I think Karen did a heroic job in bringing in a lot of the lien payments that had been outstanding for prior years. And that's what the 73,000 is that's on that line there. Much of that is past due liens on, on the individual properties, where they had, basically signed up for water service and then took it out as a 10-year lien against the service. So we anticipate in the coming year that the lien payment revenues, and Karen did an analysis on this, would be 23,000 for the coming year. That line we would expect to continue to go down as long as we don't have any additional people signing up for water and using a deferred payment plan. Because it's a 10-year loan or deferred payment schedule for those properties, and many of them are now paid off or will be coming due in the next couple of years. Really, where the water revenues, majority of the water revenues will be coming from, will be in the water revenues, usage fees, and the service fees. And so for last year, we had one billing cycle that was represented in this, what you see here for 2022. And that was the first 6 months of the current year. And that reflected a total of 58,396. And that included service fees of 20,000 and usage fees of 38,396. Now, the way that we found that is Karen actually went through invoice or bill and payment by payment and teased out the service fees from the usage fees. Because normally what we were getting was one line there. So in the coming year, we anticipate in 2023, we anticipate that revenues from water usage fees will be 95,000. That represents 2 billing cycles. The summer billing cycle and then the spring billing cycle. And the summer billing cycle is a much higher cycle, and we're getting the payments in from the past summer billing cycle. And the service fees, we anticipate there's 2 billing cycles on the billing, and that would be approximately 50,000. And we did increase the base fees by 2.5%. Am I correct, Karen?
Yes. Sorry, I was muted.
That's okay. 2.5% in November. They went up
Correct.
both for usage fees as well as for the service fees.
Correct.
So we anticipate that our total revenues in 2023 for operations would be 168,000. And we would still need, based on the difference between the debt service or between the operating expense and debt service, 294 and 168,000, we would still need approximately 125,000 for from the town for the town subsidy for the system, which is maybe, if you may recall, that's what we had been granted in prior years before we had all these fiscal problems. That it was 125,000 from the town to support the water enterprise fund, and so that's what we're asking for going forward in 2023. Ideally, we'd like to see more connections, and so we increase usage fees and service fees without having a significant increase in operating expenses. And then, are there any questions on the operating budget or debt service? I'm sorry, Tom.
Anyway,
Okay. Well, I'd like to just point out that what the next thing that we do need to consider, and we haven't figured out how we're going to do this yet, is the capital budget. I mean, capital budget would include such things as replacing the meters, the reader, for the reader to go along with the meter reading system, any work on hydrants, or if we're going to need a new generator for the Coles Neck well field. And so what we talked about was, and you may recall, we did get approval from the town back in 2019 for $3.8 million to fund the development of the water main from Coles Neck down Briar Lane, in the event that we weren't able to secure, sufficient funds from the state for that. Well, as you know, we were fortunate we got $2.5 million for from the state through Mass Works grant for the water system expansion. That's a very substantial amount, and the contract for the water main installation which was recently approved, signed, was for just under $2 million. But in addition to that $2 million, there is the fees, engineering fees, and contingency fees. So, which will likely eat up most of that 500,000. But we still have access to that funding that was approved for borrowing back in 2019. And it's my recommendation that we consider asking for an amount to cover the replacement of meters, installation of a new generator, the reader, and also I think now is the time that we should be looking to build a reserve fund for our ongoing capital expenditures, going forward. And so, even that said, I think that the amount that we're talking about there is probably going to be close to 250,000 for a new generator, and the meters, and the reader, I'm sorry, Karen, will you remind me what the reader cost was?
Reader cost was approximately 12,000,
Okay.
roughly
So I think if we say-
11,600.
And I think that if we say somewhere between 200 and 250,000, we'd be safe. And that would be, we'd be borrowing those funds for capital improvements that are necessary. One of the things that we do know is that there's work that has to be done at the Coles Neck well field. There's work that DEP is requiring of us for the installation of new drain wells there at Coles Neck as well as at the Boy Scout camp that comply with certain DEP regulations now about wastewater from that may be discharged at a well site, and we're out of compliance at at both sites right now. So having said that, that's what I'm proposing we send the operating budget along with the debt service budget along to the finance committee as it's listed on here, and that we propose a capital budget of somewhere between 200 and 250,000 for the coming year. Do I hear any comments?
So move.
You agree with it?
Yep.
Tom, what was your comment?
I budget and I approve of it.
Okay. Neil, do you have any comments or observations?
No, I have none.
Okay. So let's take a vote on this then. Can you hear a motion to approve?
So move.
In second,
Second,
okay. And roll call vote. Kateri,
Yes.
Neil,
yes.
Tom? Yes, I take that as a yes. Okay. And I vote yes as well. And so it's 4-0 in favor of the budget as proposed. So this will go to the finance committee as and with a recommendation as well for a capital budget to cover the items that I mentioned. I appreciate you, listening through that. It really was important that we do that. Okay. Quickly, I'll go through these other things now. Coles Neck well main update. We had the construction meeting, pre-construction meeting on the 9th of December, at which time we had environmental partners was represented. Whitewater was represented at the meeting. The town's Director of Public Works, Jay Norton, was with us on the meeting, and the contractor, Dig-It. And so the plan now for that is that the construction staging will start the second week of January and will continue through the winter months. The one issue that was brought up was the repaving. And I think the initial plan is that they would hopefully they would hold off on repaving if possible, except in those areas where it's absolutely critical, such as on Route 6, and just put in a T-base kind of packed space in until the spring to do the rest of it. The cost, anticipated additional costs associated with having the plant reopened to provide us with blacktop would be like $25,000. If we have to do that, that's what it will cost. It's anticipated. So, but it will, the construction will start, it will at least get underway in the staging in the second week of January. And I would like to use that as an opportunity then to reach out to the community forum to ask them to assist us in setting up a meeting where we can talk to the folks in town about the schedule for the service, the contract services. I don't even have that in hand yet, but I do know that it will start in January, and the plan is to complete as much of that as possible by the middle of May. So, any questions? Okay. The next thing that's on here is the status of the Boy Scout camp well to be motor repair. That the contract, Whitewater has approved the contract with Mahar Services for the repairs necessary for the well to be water pump, and the cost on that is $6,970. This was the well. This was not the well that was hit by lightning the prior year. This is the other well that's there, and the motor has failed. So they will be replacing that. Maybe the work has commenced on that now. The next thing on here we have is the status of the financial analysis of rates and connections. And the thing there is that the Doug Gardner of Pioneer Consulting, I think they use a different name now. It's Municipal Consultants. They have started to do. He started to do an analysis on water consumption for the prior year, and we're going to be looking at other years as well, and then we'll be sitting down with him to go over his analysis on that, as well as the development of a capital improvement program that's needed, and our budget for the current year, as well as a proposed budget for the 2023. So we will share that 2023 budget with him as well. And he wants to see the debt service schedule, so we'll be providing that. So one thing, the debt service schedule, that will be also something that Karen, you have the access to the debt service associated.
Yeah, he
with-
has it.
Okay.
He has it. I sent it. Yeah, I
Great.
sent it along. He asked me for it.
Good, okay. So that's essentially it with what's going on the analysis. But, the only other thing is that I wanted to mention is that Butch Nealon contacted us and wanted to talk about the location of the SCADA system, because it's still currently at the Department of Public Works, the building department building. And you may recall we had talked about the potential of moving that over to the police or fire station. So it would be accessible, that main computer would be accessible evenings and weekends if necessary. In further discussions with Jay Norton on that at the DPW, we're in agreement that we should leave that where it is for the time being in the DPW building. Hopefully, as you may know, we're looking to try to involve DPW more actively in the water system, and having it there on site, I think is is better for us for the time being. And also that Chief Hurley, the police department, has said that when they reviewed their space constraints there, the police station said it would be very difficult for them to locate another piece of equipment there in that room and to provide access to somebody if they needed to get in to look at it. So it'll stay where it is for the time being.
And in regards to, they don't have to, I wouldn't think they need to be told replace the equipment and all. Couldn't we just have something like a call forwarding to the police?
Well, I think the other point that what Butch had made or suggested was that we could always relocate that main computer to the water tower and in one of the cubbies there that we have at the water tower. But it felt that for the time being, let's leave that there, because I mean, you can get access to that information from other sites, from other computers. You don't necessarily have to be there at DPW.
The beauty of good computers. I'm sure they could do just call.
Right. So it doesn't require it being moved at this point.
Right.
And I think that now that we've got Jay on board in terms of knowing that it's there and keeping an eye on it, I think we'll be in better stead than we were before. So the only other thing that I have on here is the approval of minutes. We had four sets of minutes that were outstanding. The only one I don't have, Karen, was December 7th. But did we get that out?
Yeah, we got it.
I'm sorry to say.
Yeah, I sent it out
I'm sure you did.
with the agenda, with the first agenda that I sent out.
Okay, I don't have it in front of me, but can we at least do the other three?
Yeah, let's get rid of them.
September 7th, October 5th, and October 20th.
Yeah.
Are we okay to, is there any questions or corrections to any of those minutes? Anyone?
I don't think so.
I have a question about the recommendations on the September 7th.
Okay,
I think there must be something omitted under license operations to hire a person, smaller system, operating it in yourself more beneficial. I mean, that sort of,
I think this was a comment made by, what was his name? Karen, help me with this. Paul Anderson had recommended that given
Oh,
the
yes.
size of the system, that we did not necessarily need a company like Panachuk to do our billing. Wasn't that correct, Karen?
Yes. He
Okay.
felt that we should pull it in-house.
Right, that was his
Yeah.
recommendation.
well, somehow
So-
the wording it needs to be corrected so it reads straightforward.
Okay, so that to hire or to bring it back in-house because the size of the system is small enough that we should be able to do
Yeah,
this.
something like that, that just really explained. This one just didn't make any sense to me.
Yeah. Okay. Karen, can you make that correction?
Yeah, I can make the correction and then we can amend it. And are we going to
Please.
approve the amended?
We'll just say that we approve the amended version.
Yeah,
Okay,
fine. Yeah.
So what I'm asking for is a motion to approve the minutes of Tuesday, September 7th, as amended to reflect that the recommendation was to bring the billing operation back in-house, given the size of the system. And the second one would be for approval of the minutes of October 5th, 2021. And The third would be for the approval of minutes of October 20th, 2020. Do I hear a motion?
So move.
Second? Tom? Okay. Roll call vote. Catherine?
Yes.
Neil?
I was not in attendance at the September 7th meeting.
Okay, so let's see. Okay, so, well, let's take that one first then. So this, for the meeting of September 7th as amended, do I hear a motion to approve?
To add his name?
No, I'm just saying if we won't add his name, just to approve that one set of minutes. Gotcha.
Oh, yeah, sure. Yes.
And
I'll
Tom,
second. I'll second.
okay, so Neil, you don't have to vote on this. Roll call vote, Kateri,
Yes.
Tom? And I vote yes as well.
Okay.
So, and we have one abstention. So the next would be for a motion to approve the minutes of October 5th, 2021 and October 20th, 2021. Do I hear a motion?
I'll move.
Second,
Second.
roll call vote, Patrick,
Yes.
Neil,
I have to abstain on the October 20th because I was not in attendance.
oh, okay.
This was the
All right.
October 5th, aren't we?
Pardon?
Aren't we doing October 5th?
Let's do it just for the 5th.
Yeah.
Okay, just for the 5th, then, so to hear a motion to approve the minutes of the meeting of October 5th.
So moved.
So, and a second?
Good.
Okay. And so we take a vote, roll call vote on October 5th.
Yes.
Neil,
Yes,
Tom? Yes, okay, and I vote yes. Okay. All right, and the final one, when October 20th. This was a with me. And so do I hear a motion to approve the minutes of October 20th, 21?
So move.
Do I hear a second? You, Tom.
Is my name on there?
Yes, it's on, Tom.
Okay. I know I missed one in the past. So
And,
I'll second.
okay, roll call vote, Kateri,
Yes.
Tom,
Yes.
and I vote yes. Okay,
Okay.
so that's it. Okay, good. Thank you for those.
Right. So we're caught up except for what? Which one?
The December
The
7th.
7th. Yeah. Okay.
I apologize, I didn't see that. Any other business?
Nope. Well, can we talk about
Next-
putting together?
Next meeting.
Oh, yeah, next meeting. Right.
Well, I'd like to see about setting up, a Zoom meeting with a community forum regarding the installation of the new water main. And so I would assume we're going to need to have a little discussion about that in before that happens. So I'm going to reach out to community forum folks and to Hillary and see if we can establish a date for something like that.
Yeah, I'd be very interested in being part of any meeting with Hillary regarding this.
I'd love you to be part of that.
Jim, do we have to advertise it if it's a public hearing?
For what, the meeting with Hillary?
No,
That's-
the meeting to have the public hear about the water system.
If it's, I'm not sure how the community forum works on that. We have to announce it as a meeting for us, but I don't know that it has to have a broader announcement than that.
All right,
I mean, first
I'll
we're gonna,
ask-
aren't we gonna first meet with Hillary just, as a get together to talk about things?
Yes, yes. But regardless of what she says regarding the PFAS issue, I think that we still need to have the community forum meeting.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Okay.
So we need a date for the next meeting?
So the next Tuesday that we could. Yes,
Still have the old calendar up.
I know, we gotta put.
So it would be that, what, the 11th or the 25th?
Can we plan for the 11th?
Okay.
And Catherine, I will get in touch with you
Sure.
about setting something up with Hillary.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I'm glad that, we heard from our two visitors, that they really are gung ho on it, because it is really critical that we do something.
Right. Okay, so, do I hear a motion to adjourn? Tom says,
He's waving his hands.
yes.
Audio is not good.
A second,
Second,
roll call vote, Catherine,
pardon, yes.
Neil,
Yes.
Tom, Gail,
Of course.
thank you for being with us.
And I want to say I waited to the very end of all the reading of the minutes so that I could say happy holidays, everybody.
Well,
Thank you
thank
very
you.
much.
Same to you.
thanks, Gail.
Right.
You too.
And
Good
thanks,
night.
Thanks,
Yeah.
Karen.
Yeah,
Jim and Karen, thanks for all the work you put in to
Yeah,
try to
great
get that
work on
budget.
that.
I mean, I have a headache just looking at it.
Thanks again, Karen.
yeah, you're welcome. Have a good night, guys.
Yeah,
Okay.
bye now.
Bye.